son? What about my 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 son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
Welcome, everybody.
Hey.
Here he is. Welcome on in to another Fireside Chat.
Fireside Chat.
My name is Matt Roan. I am a proud member of the Chicago Children's Choir Board of Directors. I am joined by my co-host and voice of Chicago singer, Anita Gandara.
Yes.
Yes, baby. Last year, she participated in the CCC's production of Unsettlement Anthems under the direction of today's guest, Mr. Ted Hearne. Ted, thank you so much for joining. Ted is a CCC alum, a composer, a singer, a band leader, drawing on a wide breadth of musical and artistic influences to create intense, personal, multidimensional work. He's worked with artists as diverse as composer J.G. Thirlwell, jazz vocalist Renee Marie, filmmaker Bill Morrison, synth pop superstars M83, and most recently, an icon of soul, Erykah Badu. He's written for the LA Phil. He's the Yale Glee Club. In 2018, he was a Pulitzer Prize finalist. He just released his album Place, and he's got an indie rock record coming out in the fall, from what I understand. Obviously, a very busy guy. The CCC had the pleasure of collaborating with him on a production of his music for the MCA in the spring of 2019, and we have the pleasure of chatting with him today. Ted, welcome on in, and thanks so much for being a part of this Fireside Chat.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I love it.
So weird to not see everybody, but I'm imagining you there.
There's a host of young people ready to be inspired.
Yeah.
It's going down for sure. Speaking of young people, I think Anita has our first question.
Yeah. So you're a limitless musician with your ability and interest, and you cross genres and roles with your singing and teaching and composing. But where did you get started with music, and what musicians or styles inspire your creativity?
It's a great question. I got started in CCC is the truth. Yeah, my mom was a singer, and she was a opera singer, and she specialized in Baroque music. So I had this sort of like classical background as a very young kid. She got me into the choir and joined like the DePaul choir in like maybe its first or second year, back in the neighborhoods. And, really fell in love with singing in choir. And the thing that really influenced me about that, more than just sort of straight classical music, is like the way that in the CCC you could sing different types of music with different types of people. And, that like every program was a collection of different styles and different genres and different cultures. And, we learned about each other and we learned about the world through the music, which is not something that, that I was really like, that I feel like you can't really get that if you like are sticking to one background, and if you're like just immersed in classical music, you're going to get a pretty narrow perspective. So it was really beautiful to learn about music that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of your time with the Chicago Children's Choir, it sounds like it was a huge influence on kind of the path that you've taken. What were some of your fondest memories, or is there one thing that really sticks out as a member of the Children's Choir that is just like a highlight of your time?
I mean, there's so many great memories, and I was just like the biggest choir dork there was. So I was super into it. All the cool kids were like, come on. And I would be like, no, choir's the best. But I don't know, we got to travel a lot, that was incredible. I went to Russia when I was,
oh, wow.
I don't know, I was like 11 years old or something, and it was amazing. We took this tour, and, it was like, the Iron Curtain fell like 2 years prior, and we were in Russia. That was like a pretty amazing experience. And then also, I don't know, like just growing up, feeling like going from liking music to deciding to seeing that music was going to be like the reason that I was alive, and like that I want to do stuff. Like just having the choir sort of as a constant through that development process, you know, and then meeting Josephine Lee when I was a senior in high school. She came in as her first year as director, you know, and that was just a fundamentally like a life-changing experience for me to see someone who was also young and also vibrant and had like a variety of interests, sort of taking the reins of that organization and putting so much passion and so much musicianship into her work, you know. So she was a real role model for me at the end of my high school years.
I love it.
Yeah.
So in addition to your history with CCC, what musicians outside of kind of classical or the choir realm helped inspire your most recent work?
Oh, God, I don't know. I mean, I try to be to be like open with tons of different influences, right? So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of artists out there. I mean, that's kind of a tricky question. Let's see, just to be put on the spot, but like you're saying, like who is like a really important influence right now? Well, you know, I've been into this new FKA Twigs album. You like her? And like Arca and let's see who else, like some like I'm really into this like scene of like sort of avant-garde electronic music that is like kind of pop music, but it's kind of like a little too arty for that. It's like EDM adjacent, but like not exactly, you know. So like One O Tricks Point Never, or like Holly Herndon, you know, these people, like sort of like feeling some albums like that, you know.
I think you're out hipping all of the young people tuning in right
Yeah.
now.
I don't know if that's true. Maybe I'm out hipping you, but I don't know. But how many people are actually signed on right now? It's impossible to even know.
We've got 46 participants.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Sweet.
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Live and direct with 46 fans.
Here we go. I'm looking through the names. Yeah.
I love it.
Some of these people are staff members though, so that doesn't count.
Ted is basically like, pre-roll was like, I'm just going to take over. I'm going to get these questions answered. I like that you're diving into the minutia of the chat today. You know, you worked with the children's choir on Unsettlement Anthems, and you played at the MCA. What was it like coming back to your choir, like this organization that sounds like it was super formative, and what did it feel like to watch them perform your work?
Oh, I mean, that was totally that was a highlight of my entire life. It was amazing. You know, it was really great. I mean, also just that. You know, I mean, it was a real portrait concert, right? I mean, those of you who were involved remember, I mean, there, you know, it was, you know, the choir did not just my choral music, but like, you know, music from, they had instrumental music that I'd written, and then also other vocal works, and pieces that I never thought musicians in high school would sing, you know. And Anita over here, like, I mean, you sang the solo at the end of Animals. I mean, that piece is so difficult, you know, and is a really like experimental work, you know, and the, you know, the group that I wrote it for, The Crossing, I mean, they're, you know, excellent group, and they're all, you know, all contemporary musicians and stuff like that, but it weirded them out in a way that it, you know, the CCC was like not afraid of it. And so that was just like so moving to be able to be a part of it. And I got, you know, I mean, just the support that I got from the organization in terms of like being able to put the whole thing in the context of my work and talk about it. I mean, that was just so heartwarming and so beautiful. I like always remember it. It was amazing. Even when you had the screen over there with me like conducting from that concert, I was like, oh, that was so great. But yeah, the question about which FKA song is my favorite is I like the Magdalene song from this album. Although maybe I like her previous album a little better, actually, to be honest. But anyway, yeah. So Josephine says, talk about place, and I would be happy to talk about place, of course.
Well, let's do it. Absolutely. If you want to chat a little bit, I know the album just came out. Tell us a little bit about it, and you collaborated with a bunch of alumni for this, correct?
Yeah. So I mean, this piece, Place, it's a you know, evening length work. I wrote it for the Los Angeles Philharmonic and Beth Morrison projects that commissioned it, right? So we had a performance in BAM in Brooklyn in October 2018, and we were supposed to have our LA premiere a couple weeks ago, but of course, like, got canceled because of this disaster. But it's a, you know, it's a piece about like reckoning with, you know, with neighborhoods and with gentrification and with and you know, with the legacy of, you know, white supremacy and racism and redlining in America. And I wrote it in combination with I wrote it in collaboration with a poet named Saul Williams, this incredible poet. And the way that the piece worked is that I sort of started by writing my own text, trying to figure out like how can someone like me like even begin to deal with this. And I wrote the first part of this piece and set some music to it, and then gave it to Saul, and he wrote poems in response to that. And then I ended up setting that text as well. And the piece has 6 singers in it, and I thought that like because so much of this piece became like very autobiographical, it made sense to really like harness the choir and not just have the you know, not just have the CCC be present as like an influence in the work, but actually to draw from the actual people who I sang in the choir with. So Isaiah Robinson is in the piece, and Josephine is in the piece. I wrote her a part, and then also wrote parts for Ayanna Woods and Sophia Bird, both who are alumni of the choir as well. They were a little bit younger than me. I wasn't in the group with them, but I met Ayanna when she was an undergrad at the place where I did grad school, and I wrote a piece for her choir, met her there. And then Josephine referred me to Sophia as well, and they become this like quartet in the piece. And, you know, so I will have to say, like, we recorded this album, and the CCC, many of you, or some of you probably remember, you were like recorded on the album. So you are on the album on a couple of tracks. It's now released, so pick up a copy. And also what we're doing now, because we're all stuck in our homes, unfortunately, the cast of this piece is like so incredible that they all, Josephine included, have just been recording themselves singing the entire piece, and I am now editing a live film, and this should be done like next week. But it's really amazing because this piece actually, just because of the subject matter, it feels like even more relevant now that we are dealing with this horrible virus, and also that we're all in quarantine, and that we see like how this situation, how quarantine affects all of us differently.
Absolutely. I was going to say, we're talking about neighborhoods, and that the piece speaks to that. I know, Chicago is a very diverse but quite segregated place, and you saw, I don't know if you are familiar, they tore down like a coal building in Little Village and had ash spewed all over the neighborhood.
I didn't see that.
And people are like, we have a disease attacking lungs. How is something like this get greenlit? How does this sort of thing happen? How do you feel that music like really plays a big role in these contemporary issues? Obviously Place is talking about gentrification and neighborhoods, and we are obviously living in a really wild time politically. How do you feel that music, should play a role, or how do you see it working with your work?
Well, it's a huge question. Music and art is just extremely important. It's important in all times, and it helps us, reflect the world that we live in. It's through that abstraction, it's through that creativity, and that artistic force, that artistic drive that we are able to see. We're able to see ourselves differently. We're able to see ourselves outside of our work and see the world that we live in. I think that I've been thinking about this a lot, because we're, clearly like many of us who are performing musicians, see that in this time, we're not essential to the economy, right? Like obviously, like we've lost all our work, right? And yep. and that's actually, maybe that's how it should be. I mean, like in terms of just like, we have to like eat and stuff, right? But like in terms of the artistic impulse, like we're all like still feeling it, we're still making it, and we also like know that I think we're kind of like, in a way, we're especially equipped, if not better equipped, to deal with these changes in situation, because we as artists are like used to thinking in the abstract, and we're used to reflecting, we're used to figuring out creative ways to reflect our world, and so like when we find ourselves in quarantine, the art doesn't stop, just because there's no place for it economically, and it's been really, really heartening to remember that. And as to your specific question, I didn't know that about Little Village, but of course we see time and time again that the people who are not advantaged economically and the people who are not advantaged in this society, like they're the people who are more at risk for all sorts of, whether, city planning and housing laws and stuff like that, but also, they feel the environmental impact, and they feel the impact of the shortage in healthcare and the problems in healthcare and when we are struggling to deal with something like this, a pandemic, it's the people who don't have as much money, the people who are from the outskirts of society that we really have to watch out for, and music alone, like, of course, can't change policy, right? But like, it can help us see things differently, and it can help us frame the reality that we live in a way that then can then inspire change.
Absolutely. That's really rad. Anita, do you have anything else?
Yeah, kind of, I have firsthand experience with what Ted was talking about, because after playing such a big part in unsettlement anthems and, experiencing the work that it goes into, it kind of helps me realize what I want to do and how I can take kind of my life and turn it into something that can promote change.
Beautiful. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. So answer some of these questions that I'm seeing pop up.
Yeah, go for it, man. Absolutely.
Let's see. So I'll just go in the order, I guess. A lot of your work set texts from interviews or court cases. Where do you find inspiration in terms of text? Yeah, I have set pieces that come from like government documents and, pieces of text that are just not meant to be set to music at all or not meant to be aestheticized. And I feel like, when you put music next to that type of text, the context, like the associations that the music bring to it, like can free your mind up in this really insane way. So like hearing an oral argument from a Supreme Court case, for instance, if you were reading it or you were reading an article about it, you have this very familiar context and all the specificity of the words, we deal with that every day. But when you hear music next to it, you hear these words sung to music, like all of a sudden, like you're able to think about, what do these words actually mean? And can they mean something else? And does that other alternate meaning or the adjacency of the thing I'm putting it next to, does that like help me think about things differently? And, again, like that's just like, that's the goal. That's what art can do. It can help you remember that, the things that you assume are not always true,
Right on.
Yeah, going down the line, how do you feel about pop music today and the message it sends young musicians? There's so many different types of pop music, right? And like if sometimes music that is very, very popular is very, very good and is very rich with meaning and very complex, and sometimes it's not, and we all have different opinions about what is what, right? So in terms of like in general pop music and the message, like I can't really say, but I do want to caution against thinking that the thing that is selling the most means it's the best, and we have to look, when we look at pop music, we always have to think about the industry that surrounds it and how and who is benefiting commercially from that music, and as long as we can keep that in our sphere in terms of like how we're thinking about the art, I think it's all really great.
Absolutely. I know that this was actually one from our outline. This next question of what advice would you give a young composer? We have kids who are, trapped in their homes right now.
Oh my God, yeah.
There's still that need and that want to be performing and be artistic and be creating. Especially in a time like this, what would you say to folks who are eager to create and make art? Right.
Well, we're all dealing with the quarantine and the pandemic differently, right? So one thing just to say at the beginning is, I think, you gotta respect your own body chemistry, your own timing, your own space, and like some of us feel like we actually aren't very good at creating right now, or we're not feeling that drive the way that we used to. And I don't want anyone to feel bad if they're not feeling creative,
Sure.
Because we all have to deal with it differently. But if you are feeling creative and you're feeling trapped, and you need something to do, some impetus, I think it's actually a really wonderful opportunity to discover a different way about making the music that you that you normally make, right? Like if you're used to singing with a bunch of people and you can't be in a room with anybody, you know, it's a really good opportunity to like figure out like, well, how can I write a piece for just myself to sing or just myself to play? Or like, what instruments do I have in this house? Like maybe I don't have anything but this glass. So like, can I write a piece for me banging on the glass in a really cool way? Like sounds dumb, but I think that actually like, it's like an amazing time to reinvent the way that you think about music, you know, I was mentioning how we're doing a film for Place. I mean, it is, I do think that piece and this time have have like a really strong relationship to each other, but also like I'm trapped in my place and, you know, I can't like make music the way that I'm used to. So I'm learning how to edit video. And you're learning how to like, you know, fuse the music that I'm making with something that is visual. And that's something I've kind of wanted to do for a while, but like never really had the time, and no one has ever asked me to do it. So now it's like, well, I got nothing else to do, so I'm going to do it.
Right on. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
This next question from Olivia,
Mm.
do the beautiful or less glamorous parts of the world inspire you more to create music?
That is a great question. Do the beautiful or the less glamorous parts of the world inspire you more to create music? Well, you know, I would always wonder about what you mean by beauty. You know, what we mean when you say beauty, right? I think that by looking at some aspects of the world that may not call out immediately as like glamorous or beautiful, we can find, you know, I have found some things that like actually are very inspiring, right? But you know, I mean, I think this goes back to what we were talking about with respect to the mission of the choir and how singing with the group and growing up in this group has like sort of fused with like why I want to be a musician anyway, you know? And I think that like, for me, making music is about exploring difference and exploring like the tension that exists around differences, you know? And I think that has like helped me has sort of caused me to look at things that aren't actually glamorous and that aren't like put together well, you know, and things that are problems. Because I think that like when, you know, for some reason I feel that like music can help us find different ways to solve problems, or can help us look at problematic things differently, you know?
Right on.
Yeah.
One other thing that I think relates a little bit to talking about being a young composer, being a young artist, you've worked across seemingly every genre, going through your bio. What kind of skill sets do you feel that is necessary to be successful, like in a specific genre, or more widely, like what are some of the things that you found have like helped you create this, you know, career as a composer and a musician?
Skills that have helped me create a career. I mean, it's, you know, you gotta be independent, you know, you gotta be able to be cool with rejection. You know, I'm rejected, and my work is rejected constantly, you know, both by people who I really, really trust and who are friends, and also by entities that seem powerful that I don't know, that are not personal, you know? And it's like, and that's just a part of being an artist, you know? And luckily, like, because of that, you know, and because of constantly working to try to get better at what you do, like, I've also been accepted to some things, you know? And, but like, that is like, I think the most important thing is just, and just remembering like your perspective is valid, and what you have to say is, you know, is valid and authentic. And like, you know, it's up to you to try to figure out like, how can I say that in a true way, what I have to say? How can I, you know, what is my true self? What is my authentic self? And how can I be vulnerable in a work of art? Like, how can I do the thing that I'm scared to do and do it publicly? You know, that's like a really hard thing to do. You know, I've been composing music for, I don't know, 25 years, and I still like try to do that all the time and fail a lot, you know? And like, you have to be, you know, that's part of why art is so beautiful, is you have to like be able to be good at failure. And that's what makes you good. That's not a good way to be like an investment banker, you know? Like, if you're failing all the time, it's like, you're in the wrong profession. You're not making any money. But like, this is different, you know? It's like to be out there.
I love that
yeah.
you're like, it's not being good at music theory. It's like being emotional, being vulnerable, and being willing to make mistakes. I think that that's really valuable, especially for young folks. It's not going to be perfect from the jump. You have to really put that time and energy and creativity in, and be willing to not to be perfect.
Right, totally. Well, one thing about music theory, I mean, music theory is important, but it's how you theorize music can change, right? It's like sometimes we say music theory, what we're talking about is like one very particular method developed by very particular people. If you love music, like I think I encourage you to ask questions about the music, figure out what makes it work. That's music theory, and like there are going to be cool thinkers around that you can discover, but it may not be like, what's the Roman numeral analysis of this chord? This is a 6/5 chord. I mean, like that stuff is like useful. I liked learning it, but like it's not necessary for everybody,
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything else on the list that is looking enticing to you? We got a few more minutes.
Yeah, how many minutes? I can't see a clock. I don't know, but how many more
we
minutes?
We have about like 5 more minutes if you want to.
These are great. These are great
another question or two.
I'll type the answers to any that we don't get to.
I love it.
There's one that I want to ask.
Please.
Someone said, as a composer, do you think it's important to provide context/meaning about your pieces, or do you prefer to leave the interpretation up to the listener? And is there a wrong way to listen to your pieces?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, first of all, there's never a wrong way. You can't tell somebody how to listen, like ever, right? So,
Sure.
So like, you're gonna get differences, no matter what. But I think that, from piece to piece, like how much context you want to provide, how you want to present it, that's a part of the piece, I could drop the needle on some music that I like, and you might have no context and have never heard of anything like it, and you might be like, I don't like this at all. But if I explained a little bit and showed you a little bit of that person's influences, you might be like, oh, I love this, And that's true for like almost anything, That's true for the music you love, and it's true for the music you've never heard of. How do you like, do you have a program note? Do you talk about it beforehand? Is it important to know? Like, that changes from piece to piece, and you want to make sure that you're able to put it in the right context. And that's a part of composing, I think that like some of you did my piece Animals, right? That's a super weird piece, right? It starts with all these animal noises. I mean, it's meant to be a surprise. That piece is meant to have no context, because like you're supposed to be like, what? And and actually like that it works. I was shocked, but it's like when The Crossing did it, this like very staid, like professional choir, they like bust into this piece with the animal noises, and people they don't like it. It's like, this is so weird and dumb, this is gimmicky, people are laughing like, ha, ha, ha. They definitely think they're above it, and then it turns into, you discover what it's about, and then if you're smart, you're like, oh, this is actually about Trump, what Trump said about immigrants. But I feel like if you had context before and you were like, I'm gonna now play you a piece about immigration, then it would ruin people's sense of entitlement that they had to dislike the piece before they realized it was about something that they didn't expect, So, but right. That doesn't work for every piece. Sometimes you absolutely have to give context. Sometimes you absolutely have to like have the text so that you can know what they're saying, You can't hear all the lyrics of every pop song, right? And it's meant to be that way. But like, if you want to know more, you are supposed to like look into it and figure out the more to learn, right? Absolutely. So I think it changes with every time. Yeah.
That's really good. I think we have time for at least one more. I think maybe, I don't know if you want to take on this last question. It's heavy business if you want to go out with it.
Sure. I'm just going to screenshot what we have, because I know that if Pam ends the meeting, I'll probably lose these questions. So I'm just going to screenshot, because I'll type you an email and you can bring it to the group, because I want to make sure that they all get answered. But do you believe the last one? Do you believe that it's every artist's duty to confront moral issues? No, I don't. I don't think. I think that and like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's like every artist's duty to try to figure out why they want to be an artist. I think it's every artist's duty to, I don't know. I mean, I have values like vulnerability, I think is really important, but like maybe some artists like aren't really about that. I don't want to tell anyone, why they make art. Some people some people are, I know some musicians who are just like, and doubtlessly there's people in this room too, who are just like extremely talented, right? And just like they just all they want to do is make music, and all they want to do is like play an instrument. Or I have a student who plays like 12 instruments, and he's just like picks them up and he plays them, and it's like it's amazing, It's like, and if that person doesn't want to confront the wrongs of society through their work, like that doesn't matter. Like they're allowed to do it the way that they want to do it, and some artists like are in it only for money, and that's actually okay too. I mean, I don't like, if that artist was my friend, I might be like, there's more to life. But throughout history, there have been artists who like make their art so that they can get paid, or that they can get status, and like we have to respect that as part of the practice too. So I don't want to tell anybody why they should make art. Although questions around morality and what is moral behavior, what is ethical behavior in the society we live in, those are interesting questions. So art or not, we can talk about it.
I love it.
Cool.
So cool, man. This was like a truly enlightening and beautiful chat with you.
So fun. We should do more. I mean, I can't believe it was only half an hour. Love you. Ooh, look at your dog over there.
Is he here?
Oh,
good.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
I knew it. I knew he'd try and.
Who's that? What's his name?
This is Oscar.
Oscar. Like, oh, yeah. He heard his name. He's like,
yeah. Well, thank you for being a part of this and for giving us your time. I see you're surrounded by work and keyboards and dogs yourself. I know you got a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, we got stuff going on. But listen, one last plug before we go.
Yes,
the album that you all are on, right? And I'm so thankful that you were part of it. I remember that recording session was so fun and incredible. It represents a lot of work that I did, and we all did, right? It took a long time to put together, so I would just be so honored and pleased if you picked up a copy. If you can buy it on Bandcamp. I think you can also stream it. So if you don't have the money, you can also listen. I would just love for you to listen to it, and also just check out the work of Josephine Lee, among some other people who's actually on it. And then stay tuned, because I'm going to release this video once I'm done with it next week or maybe the week after, and I would love for you to all see that as well.
Incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll type the answers to the questions I didn't get and send it to you. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ted, Anita.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Bye, Anita. Bye.
Have a great night.
Bye.